Their first hunt was surprisingly uneventful, guided by an experienced pathfinder and augmented by Sunny's stealthy shadow. They managed to avoid any fallen creatures and arrive at the destination in one piece. There, the group hid in the ruins and waited for their prey to show up. The plan of battle was discussed beforehand. After Effie had described the type of monster they were here to kill, complete with a detailed list of its strengths and weaknesses, Nephis quickly assigned different roles to different people. Sunny had expected that things would work just like back in the labyrinth, but to his surprise they did not. Just like before, Neph was going to take most of the risk and lure the enemy into revealing its vulnerability. However, Castor was going to be the one to make use of it and deal the fatal blow, not Sunny, which made sense, really. After all, his ability was not a combat one, at least not officially. It was rational to entrust the role to someone with an incredibly powerful combat ability, as the one Castor possessed. Still, for some reason, Sunny felt angry about it. It felt as though he was being replaced. Not wishing to appear childish, he swallowed his bitterness and remained silent. When the monster did show up, everything went perfectly. Nephis and Castor were able to finish the creature off without sustaining any injuries. Their teamwork, while not effortless, was strangely harmonious, probably because both were legacies and had received similar kind of training. Sunny, whose task was to join the fray if things went wrong, ended up not having to lift a finger. Neither did Effie, who simply stayed with Cassie in case the blind girl needed protection. After everything was over, she laughed. "Ha, this is the easiest meal I've ever earned." Effie's status in the party was a bit strange. Unlike the rest of them, she had not shown any desire to join the cohort officially. Instead, she was somewhat of a hired worker. Her responsibilities included guiding the party through the ruins and providing them with information, and nothing else. She wasn't even required to fight side by side with them. After the nightmare creature was dead, they quickly butchered it and left the scene of the battle loaded with a heavy weight of meat. Before the shadow of the Crimson Spire fell on the dark city, the cohort was already approaching the marble arch at the base of the hill. This was when something unexpected finally happened, and it happened because of Nephis. After giving a fair share of the spoils to the vigorous huntress, she glanced at Sunny, Cassie, and Castor. Then, Changing Star said, "I would like for you three to entrust me with your part of the meat." "What? What is that about?" Before Sunny had an opportunity to ask a question, Cassie already smiled and said, "Of course, Neph." Castor did not linger either. With a small bow, he nodded. "As you wish, Lady Nephis." Sunny gritted his teeth. After that, he would have looked like a complete jerk if he were to start interrogating her, especially because, technically, he had not done anything except for lending his shadow to Effie. Nephis and Castor were the ones who had actually risked their lives. Fine. Nephis gave them a nod and continued walking up the white road. When they returned to the outer settlement, she separated the remaining share of monster meat into two parts. One, much smaller part, she handed to Cassie. The other, incomparably larger part, she simply placed on the white stones in front of their lodge. Effie looked at the whole process with curiosity. So did the slum dwellers who had gathered to welcome them back. Sunny frowned. "What are you doing?" Changing Star glanced at him and then gestured to the small bundle of meat in Cassie's hands. "This is for us to sustain ourselves. We will eat that meat until our next hunt." Somebody from the crowd shouted, "What about the rest? Are you selling it? What is your price?" It was customary for the outer settlement hunters to sell some of their spoils. That was how people here fed themselves. The meat could be exchanged for items, services, or, in very rare cases, actual shards. Nief turned to the people who had gathered around and looked at them with a frown. When everyone grew quiet, she said in a cold tone, "My hunting party will not be selling any meat, ever." Before anyone had time to react, dismayed by that answer, She took a step to the side, gestured to the large pile of meat, and said, "Instead, we will be giving it away for free. Arsi sendient, meat'll be." A dead silence hung above the edge of the outer settlement. The slum dwellers who had come to catch a glimpse of changing star, or in hope of procuring some food, were all looking at Nephis with a dark mix of mistrust, disbelief, and suspicion. After a while, someone shouted, "What trick are you trying to play? People here are hungry, changing star. Shame on you." Nephis crossed her arm, furrowed her brow, and answered, "There is no trick. Everyone is free to take a small share of the meat to fill their stomach." The young man who had accused her before laughed. "Why would you just hand it out for free? Do you think that we're fools?" Sonny was being tormented by the same question. He often joked about Neff's foolish nobility, but he also knew that she wasn't really stupid. She always had a reason for everything she did, even if those reasons sometimes seemed insane to him. Lately, he even started to suspect that Neff was much more cynical and pragmatic than he had ever given her credit for. It's just that her version of cynicism was very different from his own. What was she doing? Meanwhile, Nephis pierced the shouter with a cold look, scowled, and said, a hint of anger in her voice, "Why? Am I not a human? Are you not humans? Does a human need a reason to help others of her kind in this cursed place?" She took a step forward and looked at the gathered people, making them shiver under her heavy gaze. "Shame on me. No, shame on you all for forgetting who you are. We are people, not beasts. In the real world or in the dream realm, this is who we are." Her words echoed above the white stones, mixing with the howling wind. "Now come forward and take some food if you're hungry." The slum dwellers were still not convinced. However, their hunger was stronger than their weariness. Soon, the first of them stepped forward, tentatively took a small strip of meat, threw a furtive glance at Nephis, and then hurriedly walked away. When the others saw that nothing happened to him, they became braver. Young men and women dressed in rags formed a messy line. One by one they came forward, received their tiny piece of meat, and then disappeared with haste, afraid that it will be taken back. Slowly, a new kind of light appeared on their faces. It was the same timid, weak emotion that Sunny had noticed in the eyes of the castle inhabitants after Neff had announced her name. It was something that precipitated hope, or maybe faith. With a dark expression on his face, Sunny looked up at the tiny silhouettes of guards observing them from the walls of the magnificent fortress. Nephis was right when she said that they were all still people. However, she was wrong about everything else, because people were much worse than beasts. He did not like what was happening at all. After that day, things moved with a speed that left Sunny disoriented. It was as though he was being pulled forward by an overpowering current, helpless to slow down or change direction. Before he could react to one change, another would happen, making him feel like he was losing control. Everything was happening so fast that he found it difficult to adjust. It was hard not to fear that, eventually, he would simply be left behind. After that first hunt where Nephis had chosen to give most of the spoils away, she led them on several more. Not all of those hunts went as smoothly, but they did manage to return victorious, if a little battered. Every time, she paid Effie her share of the meat, took a small amount for them to consume, and gave the rest to the people of the outer settlement free of charge. Because of how little their own share was, the group was forced to hunt every other day instead of once or twice a month. Sunny did not understand at all why they were taking on all that unnecessary risk, provided he wasn't exposed to many risks himself. Apart from a couple of short battles where Neff and Castor ended up requiring some backup, he spent most of his time with Effie, serving as her scout and slowly learning the ins and outs of the Dark City from her. With the well of knowledge that the unruly huntress possessed and his nimble shadow, the party rarely met anything they weren't ready to face. This gave them an incredible advantage over all other hunting parties of the outer settlement, and even some of Gunlag's own. Soon, their flawless and intense track record earned the cohort reputation and renown. They weren't seen as newcomers anymore. Instead, people considered them to be nothing short of the strongest hunters in the slum. Many even believed that Changing Star and her people were in no way inferior to the hunters of the Bright Castle. Nephis herself was known to be a fearsome fighter ever since her dramatic duel with Andel. Effie had the reputation as one of the outer settlement's best from a long time ago. Handsome and capable Castor quickly won respect and adoration thanks to his amiable personality, noble bearing, and skill. The three of them were considered to be the core of the party, with Cassie and Sunny existing somewhere on the periphery. People loved Cassie because Neff had entrusted her with the responsibility of handing out the free meat, and also because it was nearly impossible not to love this sweet, exquisitely beautiful, and tragic girl. For most of the slum dwellers, she was the welcoming face of the cohort. Sonny, on the other hand, no one really paid him any attention. With no valiant feats of vanquishing monsters of the Dark City under his belt, most considered him to be a mere support member of the party. Inconsequential at best, a charity case at worst, if they even remembered his existence. Sonny was simultaneously happy to live in obscurity and secretly infuriated by this lack of recognition. It was good that no one suspected how powerful he really was, and yet, watching everyone fall over themselves in Castor's presence while completely ignoring his own made Sonny want to kill something, or someone. Especially because, due to the tactical composition of the cohort, Nephis spent most of her time with the handsome Legacy. They seemed to work especially well together. When this frustration threatened to overwhelm Sonny, he would go away, find a quiet corner, and train his catters until every muscle in his body hurt. Usually, the whistle of the Midnight Shard's blade cutting air was enough to calm him. He trained his swordsmanship day after day, finding strange comfort in it. At least this was something he could control. Of course, Sonny was never entirely relaxed. In fact, with each day, he grew more and more anxious because other things were changing as well. After each hunt, Changing Star would provide the dwellers of the slum with free food. At first, they treated her with distrust, then with gratitude, and finally with something akin to reverence. The strange light that Sonny had noticed in their eyes after that first time was slowly growing brighter and brighter. Some people even started jokingly calling her Saint Nephis, as though she was some sort of an angel. However, he felt that these words strangely contained less and less humor with each day. It was really very creepy, not to mention dangerous. The more people looked at Neff like she was their personal savior, the more he feared how drastic Gunlag's reaction would be. If history had shown anything, it was that kings never went easy on meddling messiahs. And throughout all of that, the same question continued to torment Sonny. Was all of this an accident, or had Nephis done it on purpose? As time went by, more and more random people joined their group. They weren't hunters, just forlorn young men and women from the outer settlement who wanted to help. They tended to monster hides that the cohort brought back from the hunts, maintained various tools and gear that needed to be used, assisted Cassie with handing out food, and did other kinds of small but useful things. Soon, the ramshackle lodge was full of them. Sonny didn't even know all of their names. It seemed as though every day someone new would appear, acting as if they had always been a part of the group. What's worse, not all of them seemed to know who he was, either. Not once and not twice. Someone would smile at him and ask in a friendly tone, "Are you new?" Of course, bastards never said the same thing to Castor. Sonny felt like he was slowly becoming a stranger in his own home. The feeling was rather unpleasant, not to mention how perfectly it fit all his insecurities. What's worse, these new people really made him uncomfortable. He wasn't really sure of whether they were Changing Star's helpers or if they were her followers. Were they loyal or devout? Nein, not this time. One night after a couple of weeks of this, he was suddenly woken by Cassie tugging on his sleeve. The blind girl was whispering, "Sonny, wake up!" A moment later, he was already on his feet, ready to summon the midnight shard. A light coming from the other room told him that Neff was awake too. "Gunlack? Did someone betray us? What's wrong?" Cassie covered the candle she was holding in her hand and answered in a worried voice. Something is coming from the road. I've dreamt of it. A nightmare creature." Knowing what had to be done, Sunny simply nodded, gripped her shoulder for reassurance, and walked over to meet Nephis. Since their lodge was on the edge of the slum, right in front of the entrance of the ancient road, they had no choice but to fight. That night, the three of them, Changing Star, Sunny, and Castor, battled a devil that had wandered up the hill and fought it off before it could reach the outer settlement. When dawn came, terrified people walked out of their hovels on shaking legs and saw the horrible marks left on the white stones by the beast's claws, as well as puddles of blood, both human and that of a monster, steaming in the morning cold. They also saw Changing Star leaning tiredly on her silver sword. Sunny, who was sitting with his back against the wall of the lodge and breathing heavily, was looking at her too. Back when he was describing to Nephis why Gunlog could never be defeated, he had told her that every facet of life here was under his control. Food, safety, hope, fear, even power itself. Now Changing Star had given these people food. By protecting the outer settlement, she had given them safety. She had even given them hope. There was also the fear that the inhabitants of the castle felt after Neff had easily beheaded one of their pathfinders. All that remained was power. Finally, the question that pressed heavily on his mind had an answer. No, none of this was a coincidence. Everything that had happened, from choosing the outermost building in the slum as their base to insisting on giving away the food for free, was part of Changing Star's strange but methodical plan. She knew what she was doing all along, but why was she doing all this? What was her ultimate goal? Uneasy, Sunny stared at Nephis and wondered about the future. After about a month of living in the outer settlement, Sunny woke up one morning with the feeling of not belonging anywhere in this world. This familiar feeling had pursued him for most of his life and had returned recently after being gone for some time. With a sigh, he rose from his narrow cot and summoned the puppeteer's shroud. The stone lodge was already full of sounds and voices. The tempting smell of breakfast filled the air. Coming out of his small room, Sunny saw a bunch of Neff's helpers rushing here and there, busy with various tasks. Some of them stopped to greet him, others did not. He paid no attention to them and went outside to wash his face and take a look at the sky. The gray sky of the forgotten shore looked as it always did. Nothing ever really changed in this loathsome hell. On his way back, Sunny noticed a gaunt figure standing hesitantly near the doors of the lodge. The ragged young man looked very familiar. Reaching into his memory, Sunny identified him as the friendly but nervous receptionist from the castle. His clothes were much less clean and tidy than they had been before, and his face had become even thinner. The young man had clearly seen better days. What is he doing there? Coming closer, Sunny called out to the young man. Harper, right? How come you're here?" Harper flinched, then looked at him with anxious eyes. "Oh, Sunless, it's so nice to see you." Sunny stared at him for a while, then asked bluntly, "Did they kick you out of the castle?" Harper's face instantly fell. Lowering his gaze, he stayed silent for a few moments and then said quietly, "I haven't been able to pay the tribute anymore, so yes, I guess they did." Then he glanced up, hesitated, and asked in a weak voice, I heard that I can get some food here?" Sunny tried to give him a reassuring smile. Sure, usually we give out meat after the hunts, but if you're hungry right now, I'm certain there's something we can do. Just talk to, a girl with red hair. She's in charge of breakfast, I think. Harper smiled too, the weak light of hope igniting in his eyes. Really? They will just give me a meal for free? Sunny shrugged. Why not? We have enough food right now. Most of those guys and girls are always here anyway. They're like guests that won't doesn't matter. They help around, doing this and that to express their gratitude, I guess. If you feel guilty just eating for free, ask them for some chore. This might not be the bright castle, but you'll see that life here can be not bad as well. Guiding the gaunt young man inside, Sunny directed him toward the kitchen and sighed. Even castle dwellers were now coming to their lodge. If this went on, he would have to share his room with some random stranger. What a joke. Entering the main hall, he noticed Nephis and Castor standing near the window, discussing the approaching hunt. This morning, there were several hunters from other parties surrounding them. The cohort had been planning a big joint hunt for a while now, and today was the day. Did they just start without me? Hiding his discontent, Sunny walked over to the group of hunters and greeted them. Castor smiled at him, while Nephis simply nodded. The other hunters glanced at the new arrival and didn't pay him much attention. Fools, if you knew who stands before you. Consoling himself with these childish thoughts, Sunny listened to the discussion. One of the hunters was speaking. South of the collapsed lighthouse is a good choice, but the awakened creatures living there have an incredibly sharp hearing. Attacking them in large numbers won't be easy. In the past month, their lodge had gone through a transformation. The remnants of broken furniture were long gone and replaced. Some of the new pieces of furniture came from the ruins. Some were made right here by the craftsmen of the outer settlement. There were monster hides and decorations hung on the walls, making the space look neat and presentable. These days, the lodge appeared as the headquarters of a small but prosperous awakened cohort. There was even a large map of the Dark City on one of the walls, with various symbols marking all kinds of useful information. Currently, the hunter was pointing at a particular spot on the map. This spot right here is much more promising. Blood fiends are known to dwell in these parts. They hibernate during the day, so if we manage to find a lair or two. Coster shook his head. The area you're suggesting is too close to the territory of those strange living statues. We all know how formidable those bizarre creatures are. I still think that south of the lighthouse is better. We just need to think of a way to deceive the hearing of the monsters. Suddenly finding something that he could be helpful with, Sunny said. I have a bell that can... However, his voice drowned in the buzz of the conversation. No one paid attention to his words. Embarrassed, Sunny inhaled deeply, waited for a few seconds, and spoke again. Actually, we can use one of my 2 sound-producing memories to... But right at that moment, Castor seemed to come up with a brilliant idea. Everyone listened to him, turning their backs to Sunny. It was as though he was completely invisible. What's even the damn point? Sunny stood there for a minute or two, feeling awkward, angry, and utterly stupid. Then he simply turned around and walked away. Finding his way to the roof of the lodge, he climbed on top of the second-story addition and sat there, solemnly watching as the sun slowly climbed up. After a while, Sunny sighed and closed his eyes, letting the shadow slip back into the building. Just as he had expected, no one even noticed his absence. Not surprised, he sent the shadow around the lodge, watching all the people who were busy making Neph's mysterious plans happen. Everyone seemed full of energy, enthusiasm, and a sense of belonging. Why was he the only one who couldn't fit in? Even that guy from the castle, Harper, had already found some friends. He was currently helping the red-haired girl who was in charge of breakfast wash the dishes. Sunny frowned. Something wasn't quite right with Harper. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the gaunt young man seemed a little off somehow. Forgetting all about his bad mood, Sonny concentrated on watching the timid sleeper. Harper seemed to do just what any newcomer would do, helping people, learning their names, and asking questions about how things worked in the Changing Stars party. It seemed as though he wanted very badly to stay in the lodge and become useful, which was understandable. But something was wrong. Sonny's suspicions were confirmed when, about an hour later, Harper left the lodge and went back into the slum. With the shadow stealthily following him from behind, the gaunt young man made sure that no one saw him and hurriedly dove into a secluded alley. Deep in the darkness of that alley, a man was waiting for him. Sonny frowned, recognizing one of the high-ranking guards from the castle. So that's what all this is about. The guard, meanwhile, glared at Harper and asked in a rough, unfriendly tone, "Well?" Harper looked down, his fear and anxiousness apparent. Yes, sir, I've done what you told me. It wasn't very hard." The guard smiled. "Good. It seems that you really do want to return to the castle." Harper glanced up, a desperate light igniting in his eyes. "Really? So I can return, even though I don't have any shards to pay the tribute?" The smile disappeared from the guard's face. "You will be able to return after you gather all the information that I told you to learn. If you do, I'll invite you inside myself. No need to even worry about the tribute. But remember, I need to know everything about the core members of the cohort, including Saint Nephis herself. Their aspects, their abilities, their flaws. I even want to know what hand they use to wipe. Understand?" Harper paled. "But, sir, things like that, it won't be easy to learn them, especially for a simple servant like me." The guard frowned. "Didn't you say that you knew 2 of the cohort members already? This is why I gave you this chance to begin with. Did you lie to me, boy?" The gaunt young man flinched. No, I do know them. I actually spoke with Lady Changing Star's scout already. He is a friend of mine." A wide, menacing smile appeared on the guard's face. "Then what's the problem? Just get that fool talking. Rats like him will tell you everything as long as you pay them a little attention, believe me. I'm willing to bet that this useless freeloader is walking around full of jealousy and delusions of grandeur. Pretend to respect him even a little, and he won't be able to shut up." "Ouch." Harper nodded, then suddenly hesitated. After a few moments of silence, he asked in a timid voice, "Sir, you won't hurt them, will you? They are good people." The guard stared at him for a second or two, then said in a dark, mocking tone, "Why do you ask if you already know the answer?" Hearing those words, Harper deflated. His face darkened, and he lowered his head as though ashamed to look straight. However, he didn't object. "That bastard. Just wait and see." Sonny was already planning the beating he was going to give the cowardly young man before throwing him out of the lodge, but at that moment a voice called out for him. It was Effie. "Hey, doofus, are you asleep? Come down, the hunt is starting." Torn away from the shadow's perspective, Sonny threw a dark glance at the tall huntress, called his shadow back, and sighed. "I'll deal with him after we return." But by the time he returned, Sonny was in no state to deal with anything. Despite all his misgivings and unease, Sonny had never expected that this hunt was going to change everything. He was just going through the motions, somewhat on edge because of the scale of this joint operation, but also strangely reassured by the large number of hunters surrounding him. The unusual hunting party left the outer settlement at noon, heading east to the massive ruin of a collapsed lighthouse that was situated at the edge of the city. There were almost 20 of them gathered together, all carefully making their way through the deadly maze of narrow streets, with Effie serving as the chief pathfinder and Sonny helping her by scouting ahead. The plan was as straightforward and simple as possible. However, Nothing was really ever safe in the dark city. Everyone was prepared for the worst, and pretty soon their fears came true. Halfway to their destination, a sudden sound made Effie freeze in place. Raising a fist to signal everyone to stop, she peered into the fog, a dark and foreboding expression on her face. Feeling that something bad was about to happen, Sonny commanded his shadow to return and moved closer to Cassie. His hand was ready to grasp the hilt of the midnight shard out of the air. For a few moments, everything was quiet. Then Effie's pupils suddenly widened. Scatter! As soon as the word left her mouth, the experienced hunters dashed in different directions. Sonny himself grabbed Cassie and lunged to the side, dragging her along with him. Then something large and heavy crashed from above into the cobblestones where the sleepers had been standing just a second ago. Luckily, most of them were already somewhere else due to Effie's timely warning. However, a couple of people were a little late to react. Their screams drowned in the sickening sound of tearing flesh. Sonny cursed. His shadow was nowhere near yet, leaving him with no choice but to fight without its aid. He spun around, summoning the midnight shard, and froze for a fraction of a second, all blood draining from his face. Out there in the middle of the street, a massive winged creature was standing on the cracked cobblestones, its pale body and black feathers stained by the blood of the unfortunate hunters. Its terrifying beak was open, revealing rows of sharp, needle-like fangs. A spire messenger, as Sonny watched, momentarily paralyzed by fear. A long red tongue snaked out of the creature's maw to lick the blood off its face. Move! Shaking off the paralysis, Sonny gripped his sword and prepared to fight for his life. His Vamde Mandanen. The hunters had a simple choice to make. Either separate into smaller groups and retreat into the ruins, risking encountering something equally as, or even more terrifying, or stand their ground and try to drive the fallen beast away. Without having to discuss it, everyone chose the second option. No matter how dangerous, a familiar enemy was always better than the unknown. Unknown. The surviving hunters attacked the abomination with all they had, even though their memories had no chance of breaking through the skin of the terrible creature. Each strike still hurt it. Those who had aspect abilities capable of dealing direct damage immediately used them, hoping to at least disorient the beast. Of course, no ability of a sleeper could ever hope to wound a fallen beast. However, if their assault was ferocious enough, the messenger could retreat to search for easier prey. If it only made the abomination angrier, however, most of them were going to die. More than anything, trying to resist creatures of this rank was nothing but a gamble. For several seconds, it wasn't clear which way the situation would turn. The messenger easily shrugged off the rain of attacks and lashed out with its beak, piercing one of the hunters clean through despite the man's mighty build and heavy armor. Another was almost torn apart by terrifying talons, but at the last second, Castor managed to pull the young man away thanks to his incredible speed. Sonny waited at the back, covering Cassie and praying that his shadow would come back in time to give him a chance of dealing damage to the damned creature. But in the end, it was Effie who dealt the decisive blow. Summoning her weapon, she leaped forward. Sonny could see her lean, powerful muscles moving like wire ropes under the olive skin. As though turning into a spring, her whole body tensed and then exploded with momentum. There was enough force behind her attack to split a mountain apart. Miraculously, the tip of her weapon managed to break the pale hide on the messenger's chest and stab deep, causing a stream of blood to shoot out. The creature screamed and then lashed out with its powerful paws at the huntress. A large round shield appeared on Effie's left hand. Digging the soles of her sandals into the ground, she leaned forward and received the terrifying blow. The cobblestones under her feet cracked, but the huntress remained standing. Spitting a mouthful of blood, she grinned crazily and twisted her weapon, causing more damage and pain to the messenger. It seemed as if the fallen beast did not expect to meet such fierce resistance from a bunch of ants, not to mention actually being hurt by them. Letting out another scream, it waved its wings to send the sleepers flying back, picked up the dead hunters, and jumped into the air. Soon, the abomination turned into a dark spot in the skies. All that remained behind were puddles of blood, broken stones, and the moans of battered humans. Somehow, they had survived, well, most of them. Effie straightened, dismissed her shield, and glanced down. Damn, I think my arm is broken. With blood running down her chin, the huntress laughed and leaned on her weapon, visibly exhausted. Sunny wanted to congratulate her on that awesome strike, but then something registered in his mind. Suddenly cold, he stared at Effie's weapon. He had never seen her fight before, so this was the first time Sunny saw what memory the huntress used in battle. It was a spear, an ancient, beautiful spear forged from bronze. Something clicked in his mind, disparate pieces of information connecting together, and then everything exploded. Or at least it felt that way, because Sunny finally understood the future. "Hey, doofus, you're okay?" Sunny reacted after a second or two, raising his head and staring at Effie with empty eyes. "Yeah, I'm fine, just thinking about stuff." Effie gave him a strange look, then shrugged and turned away. Everyone was too busy to pay him any attention. Not that anyone ever did. Left alone, Sunny staggered and slowly lowered himself to the ground. In his mind, one phrase was repeating itself, over and over, growing louder and louder with each second. A woman with a bronze spear, drowning in a tide of monster, a woman with a bronze spear. This was a part of the vision that Cassie had seen back at the beginning of their journey, on the night they had spent atop the giant statue of a headless knight, the one that was so harrowing that she had almost jumped into the dark waters of the cursed sea just to run away from her terror. It was also the key that connected every little piece of information that Sunny knew into one cohesive picture and let him understand the true meaning of that terrifying vision. He shuddered, remembering what Cassie had told them on that dark night in stark detail. "I saw the human castle again, only this time it was at night. There was a lonely star burning in the black skies, and under its light the castle was suddenly consumed by fire, with rivers of blood flowing down its halls. I saw a corpse in a golden armor sitting on a throne. A woman with a bronze spear drowning in a tide of monsters, an archer trying to pierce the falling sky with his arrows. All that time, Sunny was sure, for some reason, that Cassie saw the cataclysm that had devoured this land and turned it into a desolate hell, creating the Forgotten Shore. The first part of the vision was certainly referring to how the curse of the all-consuming darkness had broken free from its 7 seals. So he had just assumed that the other parts of the vision spoke about the past too. But Effie's spear gave him an epiphany, a terrible revelation that he had been wrong all this time, that the apocalyptic images Cassie had described were not of the past, but of the future, their future. Trembling, Sunny raised his head and glanced at Nephis, who was using her powers to heal the wounded hunters, her ivory face contorted in a painful grimace. His eyes were wide and full of disbelief. It was all so clear. She was the lonely star that burned in the dark skies above the bright castle, bringing with it fire and rivers of blood. After all, her name was Changing Star, or, depending on the runes used to write it, Star of Misfortune, the Star of Ruin. Sunny spent so much time fearing what Gunlog was going to do with Nephis, but he should have been scared of what she was going to do to him instead. A corpse in a golden armor sitting on a throne. Why hadn't he realized the truth after seeing the Bright Lord for the first time? It was him. Gunlog was the corpse in Cassie's vision. Effie was the woman drowning in the sea of monsters. The archer, Sonny didn't know yet, but he was sure that they would meet soon, maybe only to die together. He had always known that Nephis was guided by some mysterious, overwhelming goal. He didn't know what that goal was, but it was certainly not here, on the forgotten shore. To achieve it, Changing Star had to find a way to return to the real world. That's why she had always been so unwavering and relentless in her ambition to move forward, overcome any obstacle, endure any pain. At times, it even seemed as though her conviction was more akin to an obsession. Nephis was willing to do anything to fulfill her dream. The comforting words she had told him on their first day in the dark city suddenly resounded in his mind. Only now there was another, colder and much darker meaning hiding beneath their surface. We will find a way to return. No matter what has to be done, we will. No matter what has to be done, there was only one way to leave the forgotten shore, and it lay in the Crimson Spire. No sleeper could ever hope to reach that gateway in one piece. They would need an army to even try. Maybe then, walking on corpses, one or two survivors would be able to escape from this cursed place. But Nephis didn't have an army yet. To gather one, she would need to kill Gunlog, usurp his power, and eliminate all opposition, drowning the bright castle in blood. Only then would she be able to rally every single sleeper left in the dark city and lure them into following her on a suicidal crusade, knowing all too well that most of them would die because of it. No sane person would follow her. They won't, right? Sonny remembered the faces of the young men and women that had become part of their group in the last few weeks. The strange light of hope, or maybe faith, burning in their eyes. The almost religious reverence they felt toward Nephis. No, not Nephis. Toward Changing Star of the Immortal Flame clan. Their personal angel. Were they sane, still? Finally, he understood every part of Neff's plan. Looking at the beautiful young woman with silver hair, Sonny shivered. And then there was the last part of the prophecy. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On their way back, Sonny felt as though he was in a feverish dream. The magnitude of the revelation was too much for him. His mind felt weak, unsteady, and on the verge of breaking apart. He had never experienced such a deep feeling of shock. It was as though the very core of his being was violently shaken. He wasn't equipped with the right tools to cope with it. It felt as if he was on the verge of losing it. Sonny was truly horrified. Don't waste time trying to deal with your emotions. This is not the right time for feelings. You need to figure out how all of this affects you personally and what you need to do to turn things to your advantage. After all, what was there to be scared of? That many people would die. What did their lives and deaths have to do with him? Yes, yes. As long as he was the one left standing in the end, this whole thing might actually turn out to be beneficial. Hadn't he spent the last weeks being afraid of what Gunlag was going to do to them? Well, now he knew that Gunlag was going to end up as a corpse. Problem solved. Wasn't he crushed by the news that he would spend the rest of his life in this odious hell? Well, now that wasn't a certainty anymore. That last part of the prophecy, everything was well, better than ever. Nand. And yet, no matter how much Sonny was trying to be rational, he just couldn't help but be filled with terror. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In the crimson light of sunset, he found a reason to leave the lodge and walked to the edge of the stone platform. No one really cared that much about his whereabouts, so it wasn't hard to disappear for a while. No one noticed that something was bothering Sonny either. They were all accustomed to his moody behavior anyway. Only Cassie seemed to have picked up on something. And Castor, who pretended to be carefree, but actually had a habit of watching anyone close to Nephis like a hawk. The bastard. Reaching the very end of the stone platform, Sonny turned around and looked at the outer settlement and the magnificent castle towering above it, with hundreds of sleepers rushing to find shelter before the coming of night. A cold and harrowing feeling gripped his heart. All these people, all these people are going to die. Neff was going to kill them. Was he willing to help her do it? For some reason, Sonny wanted to laugh. This whole situation was so sick and appalling that it was almost ridiculous. He was never an altruistic type, really. More than that, he always prided himself on being a cynical, selfish, and vicious person. But this was too much even for him. Grabbing his head, Sonny moaned, "What am I going to do?" At that moment, the sound of steps suddenly attracted his attention. A gaunt figure appeared from the slum and walked toward him. Sonny frowned. "Oh, right, that guy. I had completely forgotten about him." Harper stopped a few paces away and smiled timidly. "Sunless, can we talk?"